Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This time we are gonna build a full stack CRUD application using MERN Stack. CRUD stands for create, read, update and delete. And MERN stands for MongoDB, Express.js, React.js and Node.js. For the front end, we are gonna use React.js, Tailwindcss to style our application, and finally useQuery to fetch our data from the backend. For the backend, we will use Node and Express.js to make HTTP requests such as get, post, delete, and put. We will be using Milad to upload images to the server, Postman to test our API, and MongoDB database to store all the data. Now let's see how our application looks like. For each contact user, we will have a separate card where we will add their data such as profile image, full name, email, phone number, and date of birth. Using this button, we will be redirected to the form page where we can add a new contact user. In this form, we can add the contact user data. And if I click the submit button, you can see we will have a new card immediately without refreshing the page. That is the power of useQuery. Down here we have two buttons. The first one will delete the card and the second one will update. Now if I click the second one, we will be redirected to the form page again. But this time all the inputs are being filled with the user data. The form title and button have been changed to the update text. I can add an extra text here and change the birthday. Now as soon as I click the update button, you can see that the card is being updated immediately. Alright guys, that's what we are gonna build in this video. I hope this video will be helpful for you. Before we start making this project, make sure to like the video and give a subscribe to my channel. Okay guys, so now I'm inside the VS Code. I'm gonna open my terminal and inside here I need to change my directory. So in this case it's gonna be desktop. And now I'm gonna make a new folder here using make_dir contact app. Now I'm gonna navigate to that folder. Okay. Now inside this folder, I'm gonna have two more folders. The first one is gonna be client and the second one is gonna be server. So the client folder will hold all my front-end code and the server will hold all the backend codes. So at first I'm gonna make a new file and call that index.js. Now inside the terminal, at first navigate to the server folder and then write npm init-y to generate a package JSON. Okay, now I'm gonna change this name. Now we need to install some dependencies and I'm gonna write npm install express nodemon molter.env and mongoose. Molter to upload our images, .env environment variable, mongoose for the database. Okay, now hit the enter. Alright, as you can see we have all the files inside the package.json. So I just open the index.js and in here first I'm gonna import express and then .env. Now down here we need to call this express.js. And now we need to have a port to open this API in the browser. So I'm gonna write app.listen. The port is coming from the environment variable. So I'm gonna write process.env.port an arrow function. And inside here I'm gonna write console log app is running at port and this port which is coming from environment variable. Okay, now I need to active the .env file. Okay, and inside this server I need to have a .env file. Now I'm gonna write port, and the port is gonna be 5000. Okay, now if I write node index.js, you can see that my console log is printed in the terminal. Alright, now as you can see, if I change the text here, I won't get any update in the terminal, and it will be boring to keep writing node index.js over and over again. Okay, for that cause, I have installed the MERN. I just open the package.json here, and inside the scripts, we need to write start MERN index.js. Now if I run npm start in the terminal, you can see that the app is running. And if I change something in here in this console log, you can see that the change will be printed immediately inside the terminal. Alright, now let's write our first API. So the first API is gonna be a GET request, and the first parameter is gonna be this path, which is only slash. So slash means it's gonna be inside the home route, and following that we need to have a request and response. Okay, so the request is what is we are sending to the browser, and response is what is we are receiving from the browser. Okay, now down here we need to write res.status 200.json, and this is the main page of the API. So using response.status 200, it means that we tell the browser that this request should be successful. So status 200 means successful in HTTP request, and then the JSON will print a text for us once the request was successful. Okay, now if I open the browser, and inside here I'm gonna look for localhost 5000, you can see that the text is printed in the browser. Okay, alright guys, you just made your first API request successfully. Now let's move forward and connect our database. So I just open a new tab, and inside here I'm gonna look for MongoDB database, and in here you can see a sign in button over here. Now click the sign in. Inside here you can see a sign up button. So if you have an account, you can just sign in, but if you don't have, just click the sign up, and it will have some steps that you can take, and finally sign in into your account. Okay, now once you are signed in inside your account, you will see this dashboard here, and if you open the database access, inside here you can add a new database. So in this case I have already added my database. Just click add a new database user, and you will get this. Okay, here if I click edit, I can edit my password. So you can set a password. Later on you will need this password to connect your MongoDB to your application. Okay, alright, now let's connect that. So I just go back to the database and click this connect button. Down here you can see there is written MongoDB for VS Code. So just click that, and you need to just copy this URL. Okay, just come back to your VS Code. Inside the environment variable, just write your variable name and paste your URL. As you can see, your username will be printed there along with the password. So just write the password that you just added inside your database. Okay, now we need to make a new folder, and I'm gonna call that database. Inside here we need to have a database.js file. Okay, now first of all we need to import Mongoose. Okay, and down here we need to write export const connect db is equal to arrow function. So it's gonna be a synchronous function. Now inside this function we need to have try catch block, and inside try you need to write await mongoose.connect, And we need to write process.env.database. So this is the URL that we just get from the MongoDB. And inside the catch, you just write console log and error. Okay. Now once the operation is successful, you just write console log MongoDB connected. Okay. And following this database URL, just make a new block and paste these two codes. Okay. And that's it. By the way, it's not ES6, so I just remove this export, and instead I'm gonna write module.export is equal to connectdb. Okay. So I just open the index.js, and we need to import that connectdb function here. And don't forget to add this .js here, otherwise it will not work. Okay. So now all you need to do is just paste this function inside this app.lesson. Okay. Now if I open the terminal, you can see that MongoDB connected. Okay. Now our MongoDB is successfully connected to our server. Alright. Now inside the server, we need to have a new folder for our modules. So we need to specify our modules in here. So I'm gonna have a file inside, and also another folder called routes. So we are gonna write all the APIs inside this folder. Okay. So first of all, inside the module folders, I'm gonna write contact.js, and inside here we need to specify all the modules. So at first we need to import Mongoose. Okay. And down here we need to write a new schema, mongoose.schema, and this block. Inside here we need to write full name. The type is gonna be string, and required is gonna be true. So this is the type of our text, which is a string, and the required means that the input shouldn't be empty. Alright. So I just copy and paste that for the others. The second one is gonna be email. And finally, we need to have a birth for our birthday, and the type is gonna be date. So after this block, you need to add a comma and write timestamps is true. It will add the date of when our contact user is added to our database. Okay. Now we need to export that. So I'm gonna write const contact is equal to mongoose.module. Now you need to specify the module name in here. So the module name is gonna be contact, and this contact is schema function. Okay. Now down here you need to write modules.export is equal to contact. Alright. We are gonna use this function when we interact with the database. Now following this timestamps, you can add the collection names as well. So you can write collection name is equal to contact. Now I just come back to the routes, and inside here we need to have a file. At first we need to import our express. Okay. And now down here I need to write const route is equal to express.router function. So this function will help us make routes in our API. Okay. From now on, we will make our HTTP request using this route. So down here, I'm gonna write route.get our path and request response. Now inside here, again we need to write response.status to 100, JSON, and this text. Okay. And finally, we need to export this route so we can have access to this route inside the index.js. Now let's open the index.js. Inside here we need to import that route. Okay. And the way we can make routes inside the Node.js is you need to write app.use and your route's name. Following that, just paste your route function. Okay. And that's it. Now I'm gonna comment out my first API request. Now if I open the localhost 5000, you can see that the home page has no text. But if I navigate to /contact, now you can see that the text from the contacts route is displayed. This is how you can make route inside the Node.js and Express.js. Okay. Now if I uncomment that, And if I come back and refresh the page, now you can see that the main API is displayed in the browser. Alright, and we can navigate back to the contact. Now you can see that the text from the context route is displayed. And by the way, you can add API in here too, so it doesn't matter. Now if you write here API/contact, you can see that the text is printed. Alright guys, now let's make our next API. So the next API is gonna be post request. So I just come back, and in here I'm gonna write route.post. My route is gonna be /create request response, and again it's gonna be asynchronous function. Inside here we need to write try and catch block. Inside this try and catch block, we need to write const new contact is equal to. Now we need to import our contact module from contact.js. Okay, and following that we need to write await contact.create. Now inside this parentheses we need to specify what do we want to create. So if you remember before, I said request is what we are sending to the browser. So in here we need to specify request.body. So request.body is what is coming from your input in the front end. Okay, for example, if I go to browser, and you can write API contact/create, and the form will get this question mark. So full name is equal to empty string and email is equal to empty string. Okay, so this is what is coming from the form, and this is called request.body. Alright. Okay, now we need to write response.status 200 again .json, and inside this JSON we are gonna have a block. Status is gonna be success, and we need to print this new contact variable. Okay, and now inside this error we need to write response.status, but this time the status number is gonna be 500 because it's gonna be error. The JSON block status is gonna be filled and error. Okay, so now to check if our API is working or not, you need to download a software called Postman. So just open the browser and right here download Postman. You need to click this link, and in here you need to click this Windows 64 byte, and it will download a copy of Postman for your machine, and just install that. Okay, once you have installed, you can open it in your desktop, and you will have this page here, and at first it may ask you to do some sign in or sign up. Okay, alright guys, now we need to add a new collection using this button, and you can see that we have a new collection. You can change the name, and I'm gonna name it contact app. Alright, and using this new button you can make an HTTP request. So if I click that, you can see the first one is HTTP. Just click that one. Okay, now in the left side you can see the type of the HTTP request, which is GET for now, and in the right side you can write the URL of your API. Okay, now I'm gonna write my URL API/contact, and if you click the left side you can see different kind of HTTP requests. Alright, now if I click this send, you can see that my text is printed in here. Alright, okay guys, now let's check our create API. So in this case I'm gonna choose post, and following that you need to write create. Alright, now down here you can see we have body, so just click body, and from here you need to choose JSON because our texts are gonna be in JSON. Okay, now inside here you need to add a block and just write all your inputs here with a text field. Okay, now if you click this button, okay, we have an error, okay, because we are using JSON in this application. So we need to come back to the index.js and write app.use express.json. So this code will active the JSON text. Okay guys, so I just forget to add this new keyword before this Mongo start schema. Make sure to add that because that is important. Alright, just come back, and if we click the send button again, you can see that we have successfully added our data to our database. Alright, now if I go back to the MongoDB database, in here if I click this browse collections, you can see that we have a new collection here called contact and our data. Okay. Alright guys, we have successfully created our data inside the database. Now we need to make a request to display all the data. So I just come back and I'm gonna write here try and catch block. Okay, and again I'm gonna have a new variable called all contacts is equal to await contact.find. So this find method will help us find all the data inside the database. Alright, now down here we need to copy and paste this again, and I'm gonna change this variable name to be all contacts, and again I'm gonna copy and paste this error message. Alright, now let's check it inside the postman. Now inside the postman, as you can see, I have changed the request to be get, and I just removed the create route from here. Okay, now if I click the send, you can see that we have two data inside our database. Alright, so I'm gonna come in down here, create a new contact user, and now we need to get single contact user. Okay, so I'm gonna write route.get, but this time we need to get using the ID. So I'm gonna write /ID following that request response. Okay, now we need to get the ID of the single user. So I'm gonna write const ID is equal to request.params.id, and this request.params.id will help us get the ID dynamically. Okay, so down here we need to write a try and catch block, and again we need to have a variable is equal to await contact.find by ID, and inside this parenthesis we need to write this ID. Okay, again I'm gonna copy the status from here and paste it down here. Okay, now I'm gonna change the variable again, and similar to that I'm gonna copy this error message here. Alright, now if I copy this ID from here and following this contact, I'm gonna write this ID. So using this get method I will get this single user. Okay, now you can see that I just get the single user. Alright, let's check another user. So I'm gonna copy another user's ID and I'm gonna paste that here. You can see that I just get another user. Okay, now let's make another request. So I'm gonna copy and paste the whole function down here. So this time we need to update our user. So before this dynamic ID we need to write a route for update, and now down here instead of this find by ID we need to write find by ID and update and pass this ID, but inside this parenthesis we need to send a new data as well. So the new data is gonna be request.body. So this is gonna be a new text that we are replacing with the existing text. Okay, but this time it's not gonna be a get request, it's gonna be a put request. Alright, now I'm gonna come back to postman, and again I'm gonna change this request to be put, and down here you can see that the name is Ahmad Amir, so I'm gonna change that. But before we need to write update here because it is update route. Alright, and make sure to write a new text here. So I'm gonna write updated. And if I click the send button, now I'm gonna delete this whole ID and update route. And if I check that again inside the GET request, okay, you can see that the name is changed. It means that our API is working perfectly. Alright, now we are done with this request. Let's copy and paste that, and this time we make a delete request. So I'm gonna write delete here in this route, and it's gonna be a delete request. Alright, again we need to change this method to contact.findById and remove. Now I'm gonna pass this ID here, okay, and by the way you need to change this variable's name because you need to have unique variable name for each HTTP request. So I'm gonna change here to be updated user and here to be removed user, okay. Alright, now I'm gonna come back to the postman, and this time we need to have a delete request. Again I'm gonna write delete and paste this ID here, okay. If I click this send, you can see we get our single user back, but if we check the whole database, you can see that that user is not exist anymore. It means that the user is deleted from the database. Okay guys, now if I check inside the database in MongoDB, you can see that we have only one user in here. Alright guys, we are almost done with the HTTP request. So the final HTTP request is gonna be uploading image. So for that cause, I have installed the Molter library, so it will help us upload our image. So I just come back to the index.js. In here I'm gonna write upload image. I'm gonna comment it out, okay. Now first of all we need to import Molter, and down here we need to write const storage is equal to molter.disk storage. Alright, so inside this object we need to have two properties. The first one is gonna be destination, which specify where our image should be uploaded. So it's gonna be request file and callback function, and down here we need to get the callback function. The first parameter is gonna be null. The second one is gonna be the path where we are gonna upload our image. So in this case it's gonna be upload. So I just come back, and inside the server you need to have a new folder and call that upload. Make sure to match the name because it's gonna be our image destination, okay. And the second property is gonna be file name, and in this case we are gonna specify what our file's name should be, okay. We need to write the callback function again and null, and in this case we need to write request.body.name, so it will get the name of our image. Okay, now you need to merge that inside the Molter. So in this case we are gonna write const upload is equal to Molter storage is equal to storage. So it's coming inside the Molter library, so don't worry if you don't understand that, just follow along, okay. So down here we need to write a post request. The path is gonna be API/upload, and just write upload.single and just pass this file string here. Following that you need to have request response, and again you need to write the status here, okay. And in this case we need to write a message image has been uploaded. Alright, that's it. We are done with uploading our image. Now let's test that inside the postman. So I just come back here. In this case we need to choose a post request again, and we need to change the URL that we just write here, API/upload, okay. And this time we are gonna choose form data. because we are gonna upload the images using form data. Okay, and again the type is gonna be file because we need to upload an image here. In here you need to choose your image. So in this case I'm gonna choose this image. You need to write a description here. Okay, we have an error. That's because we have written here request.body.name, and because Postman cannot give a dynamic name, we need to change here with another name. So in this case I'm gonna write image.png. okay, now inside here you need to specify a key. So if you remember, inside upload.stringle we have passed this file key. Now you need to write here file. Okay, now if I click send, you can see that we have the message image has been uploaded. And let's check it inside the upload folder. You can see that the image exists here. We have successfully uploaded our image to the server. Alright guys, that's all the HTTP requests that we need to do in this project. We are done with the backend side. Now let's move to the frontend side. Okay guys, now let's implement the frontend part of our application. As you can see, we have another folder in here. It's client. So I'm gonna open my terminal, and in here I need to navigate to the client folder. Okay, now we need to use Vite to install our React application. So I'm gonna open the browser, and inside here I need to look for Vite for React.js. In here, just copy this one and paste that inside your terminal. You need to add this /, so your React app should be installed inside this directory. Now you need to choose your app. So I'm gonna choose React and then JavaScript. Now we have the React app, but we need to install that. So I'm gonna write npm install here. Okay, so now let's install our Tailwindcss. So I head back to the browser and look for Tailwindcss. I'm gonna copy this code here, paste that in the terminal. Okay, now you can see we have two more files here, one for tailwind.config.js and the other one is postcss. Okay, now we need to change this content with a new text. So I'm gonna copy this one and paste it here. Okay, one more thing that I need to add is this code inside this index.css, and I'm gonna get rid of this app.css because we don't need that. And finally I'm gonna delete every code inside app.jsx, remove this all from here, and change this function to be an arrow function. Okay, I'm gonna write here hello world. Okay guys, so before we start running this application, we need to install a few dependencies to our app. So I'm gonna open the terminal, and in here we need to write npm install react router DOM. It's gonna help us for routing our application. React icons, we will get icons from here. Axios will help us fetch data from the backend, and useQuery, we will combine this library with Axios to fetch data from our API. Now let's run this application using npm run deep. Click this link here. You can see that the hello world is printed in the browser. Now let's check if our Tailwindcss is working or not. Okay, so inside this index.css, I'm gonna target all the elements. So in vanilla CSS, you could write like this, margin 0, padding 0. But from now on, we are gonna use this @apply keyword, which is coming from Tailwindcss, and I'm gonna write here m0, margin 0, padding 0, and box to be border. It means that box sizing to be border box. Okay, now I'm gonna write a class name inside this heading 1. text read 400. As you can see, our text color is changed. It means that the Tailwind CSS has been successfully installed to our application. Okay. Now inside this search, I'm gonna make a new folder called components. And inside here, we need to have a file called contacts.jsx, so it will hold our contacts. Okay. Now I'm gonna generate the React code here. If you don't know how to generate this type of code, you just open the extension part, and inside here you need to look for ES7 plus React Redux React Native snippets. So using this extension, you will be able to generate React code. Okay, now I need to import this component inside app.jsx. Okay, I'm gonna write contacts, and you can see that the contacts has been printed inside the browser. Alright. Okay, now we need to have some dummy data to style our application, and later on we will get the data from the database and from our backend API. Okay, we have an array of data, so we need to map through all of them down here. Okay, so first of all, we need to get rid of this text, and we need to have a title here, contact application, and then we need to have a div down here, and inside here we need to map through all the data. Okay, and we need to render that inside another component, and I'm gonna call that contact and set this contact to that component. And because we use map here, we need to add key. Okay, now let's make that component here, and we need to import that component inside this contacts. Now you can see that we have multiple contact text here that represents our cards. Okay, now let's style this. I'm gonna give a class name to this div. The width is gonna be 80%. MX auto, margin Y is gonna be 3 rem, border 2, border blue 100, shadow MD, shadow gray 400, rounded LG. Okay, now we have this border radius, shadow, and border color. Alright, for this heading 1, we need to have a padding of 6, text center flex 1, text to Excel, font bold, text gray 700. Okay, now our heading is looking good. So for this div, we need to write padding 4. For the large screen, padding is gonna be 7, flex, item center, flex wrap, gap 5, width is gonna be 95%, MX auto. Okay, now they are beside each other, so flex wrap will help us make it responsive. Okay, now I need to open the contact component here, and inside here we need to get that contact that we just sent to this component, and in here we need to destructure our properties from this object. So I just go back to the contacts, and I need to copy all these properties from here. I'm gonna write here const curly braces, and I'm gonna paste all of these properties here. Make sure to add commas, and they are all coming from contact. It means that we have destructured our object here. Okay, now down here we need to delete this contact, and at first we need to render the image. The source is gonna be image, and alt is going to be contact image. Down here we need to have a div. Okay, and we need to have a paragraph here. The value is gonna be full name. I need to copy and paste them for multiple times, and change this one to be email. this one to be phone number, and we need to have one more for the birthday. Okay, and we need to write a text beside each of them, so we need to specify what they all belong to. Okay, now let's check it in the browser. You can see that we have image with the text here. That's cool. So for this div, we need to give a class name. The width is gonna be 17 rem, shadow MD, shadow gray 400, overflow is gonna be hidden, rounded LG. Okay, now they are looking good. For this image, the width is gonna be full, height is gonna be 12 frame, and object is gonna be cover. Alright, now let's style this text here. We need to add a padding 3, text small, flex column, and gap 1. Okay, alright, now they are looking better. So down the text, we need to have two buttons here, one for delete and one for update. So for that, we need to open the React icons here. Okay, and at first I'm gonna look for trash icon here. We need to import that from React icons. Alright, and the second icon is gonna be edit. I need to copy that and import that here again. Now down here we need to have a div, and we need to have two buttons. I'm gonna copy both icons from here and paste them inside the button. Okay, we have an error here. Okay, the problem is it's not a dot, but you need to add slash here. Okay, and you can see that we have two buttons down here with the icons. So we need to give it a class name, padding 3, flex item center, justify end, and gap 2. Okay, now let's style our buttons. So we need to give a class to the first one, text read 700. We need to give a hover effect and opacity 75. Okay, I'm gonna copy this class name for the next button, and the next button will have a text of blue 600, and also the text is gonna be extra large. Alright, you can see that it's looking good now. Okay guys, now after the text we need to have a button to navigate to our form route. So I just come back here. Inside this contacts, we need to have a new div, and we need to have a button here. The text is gonna be add contacts, so it will help us navigate to the form page. We need to give a class name here. The text is gonna be right, margin right 10, and we need to give a style to this button. Button text small, padding x4. So we will give style to this button class in index.css because we are gonna have multiple buttons. So I just write those styles under one class and call that button. Now I'm gonna come to index.css. In here I'm gonna target button. Again write at apply, bg orange 600, padding white 2, text white, rounded MD, and the hover effect is gonna be opacity 75. Okay, now let's check. You can see that our button is ready here. Okay, now our main page is ready. Now let's implement the form page. So at first we need to make routes. So I just open main.jsx Inside here, I need to import browser router from React Router DOM. I just installed that in the beginning of the video. And we need to wrap this app with that browser router here. Okay. Now I need to open the app.js. I'm gonna delete this contacts from here. And we need to import two more things in here. The first one is gonna be routes. It's coming from React Router DOM. The second one is gonna be route, single route. Okay, now inside here you need to write path. This is gonna be the path of our route. I'm gonna import that. Okay, the path is gonna be the slash. Slash means the home page, and the element is gonna be our contacts. So element will target the components. What components should this route render? Okay. Now if I go back to the browser, you can see that our main page is in its plus. It means that we have displayed these contacts in the main page. Now inside this component, we need to have a new folder for add contact and a file add contact.jsx. Okay. Now I come back to the app.jsx. Inside here, I need to copy this route and import this new component here. And this time our path is gonna be /add. So using this path, we will have access to our form component. Okay. Now if I come back to the browser, and in here if I write /add, you can see that we have been directed to the add contact component. Okay. Now let's make the functionality to this button. So it should direct us to the form page. Okay. So I'm gonna open the contacts.jsx here, and down here we need to write const navigate is equal to useNavigate. It's coming from React Router DOM. Okay. And we need to set an on click to this button, arrow function, and navigate. Okay. Inside this parenthesis, you can specify the direction of your route. So in this case, I'm gonna write /add. Now, if I come back here and click this add contact, you can see that I'm directed to the form page. And you can see this add contact text here. Okay. Now let's style this. So at first we need to change this div to be section. And inside here, we will have a button. So it will direct us back to the main page. Okay. And down here we need to write a div, and we need to have a form here. Okay. We need to have input placeholder is gonna be full name. I need to copy that for multiple times. And the last one is gonna be for uploading our image. Okay. And finally we need to have a button here to submit our form. Alright, now you can see we have them all in the browser. I need to style this go back button here. Class name absolute top 2 rem, left 4 rem. Again that button style, padding X 5 and text small. Okay. Now our button is in the right place. For this div, we need to write here flex item center, justify center. Okay. Now to bring this all inputs in the middle, you need to write here height screen. It means that height is gonna be 100 view height. Okay. Now they are in the middle. For this form, we need to give a border gray 400. Width is gonna be 32 rem, padding 5, flex column, gap 5. Okay. Rounded MD, shadow gray 400, margin 5. For the large screen, margin is gonna be 0. Now our form shape is ready. Okay. Now let's style our inputs. Okay, I'm gonna select all the inputs and we need to give them a class name. The class name is gonna be input. Okay. Now open index.css. You need to target this input class. At apply, border gray 400, padding 3, outline noun, rounded MD, and finally text small. Okay, now they are looking good. Actually, for the last input, we don't need this line here, so I'm gonna get rid of this class name for the last input. Okay, now we need to style our button here. I just write this button class. Alright, now our form is ready, but we need to have a title at the top of the form. So to make that, I just come back here, and inside this form I need to have a heading 1 and write add contact. Okay, class name, text center, text Excel, and font medium. Okay, now our title is ready. Alright guys, the last thing that we need to do in this part is we need to make another function for this button here, so it should navigate us back to the main page. Okay, now in here you need to copy this navigate here again from this component. Now I'm gonna import that from React Router DOM. Again, inside this button you need to set an onClick, but this time instead of route you need to write -1. So if you write here -1, it will navigate you one step back. Okay, so now if I click this button, you can see it will bring us to the main page. If I click this add contact, we will be directed to the form page, and if I click this go back, we will be directed to the main page. Okay guys, that's it for this part. Now let's move to the next part. Hey guys, welcome back. In this video you will learn how to make GET request and POST request using React Query and Axios. Alright, now let's get started. I just come back to my VS Code, and inside here we need to add a new folder. I'm gonna call that fetch contact, and inside here we need to have a new file called fetchcontact.jsx. Okay, so in here at first we need to import Axios. If you haven't installed Axios, just open the terminal and navigate to your directory, and then write npm install Axios. Okay, I've already installed that, and you can do this way. Now we need to have a base URL for our API, so I'm gonna write here const base URL is equal to import.meta.env.with base URL. So this URL will come from the .env file. Now we need to create that .env file here. Make sure to add your .env file in the global folder, not inside the source. As you can see, I have a .env file here. Just open that, and inside here just copy your variable name here and paste your URL. In this case, this is gonna be our API URL. Okay guys, now we are ready to make our HTTP request, and at first we need to fetch all the data and display that inside our application. Okay, now I'm gonna write here export const get all data is equal to arrow function. Inside here we need to have a try and catch block. This is gonna be an asynchronous function. Now inside this try you need to write const response is equal to await axios.get, and we need to write here a template string. At first we are gonna have our base URL and our path here, API and contact. Okay, now inside this error we are gonna console log this error here, and finally we need to return this response.data. Alright, now to fetch data in our application we need to install a new library which is React Query. So just open your terminal, and in here you need to write npm install React Query. Okay, once you have installed that, you need to come to your main.jsx here, and you need to import something from React-query. The first one is going to be query client, and the second one is going to be query client provider. So at first we need to make a variable here, const query client is equal to new query client, and now we need to wrap our application with this query client provider, and just pass this client to be equal to query client. So this is just the setup of React query. Now we have access to React query in our application. Okay. Now I need to open this contacts file. As you can see, we have our dummy data in here. So inside here, we need to import a function called useQuery from React query. And now we need to write here const data is loading is error is equal to useQuery. At first, we need to have a key for this request, and we need to write this function which we just write inside this fetch contacts.jsx. Okay. So the data is what data we are receiving from the backend. Is loading is when the application is loading, and is error is when there is something wrong with the API. Okay. So now I'm gonna console log this data. Let's see what we have inside. If I refresh the page and inspect the browser here, okay, we have an error. That's because we have double slash here, so we need to remove one of them. I just come back and I need to remove this slash from here. You can see that we have successfully fetched the data from our API. The status is success, and we have a variable here, all contacts, which is currently empty. Okay. Now to print this empty array, we need to come back here, and following this data, we need to write all contacts. Now if I refresh the page, you can see we have empty array. Alright. I'm gonna delete this console log, and down here we need to change this data1 to be data only. Okay. Now if I refresh the page, you can see we have an error here. So to fix this error, you need to write a question mark beside this data.map. Alright. Now if you refresh the page, you can see we don't have that error anymore. Now we need to come back here, and at first we need to display some data when our application is loading. So I'm gonna write here an object, and I'm gonna say is loading. So if the application is loading, we need to print a paragraph saying loading. Okay. I'm gonna copy and paste that, and I'm gonna write here if the application is giving us error, we need to print this something went wrong. Alright, now let's check that. You can see if I refresh the page, and you can see there's loading text here. Alright, now you can see that our database is currently empty. So when there is nothing inside our database, we want to display a text here. So I'm going to come back here, and before this data we need to set a condition. We are going to say if data question mark dot length is equal to 0, we want to display this paragraph no contact exists. Otherwise we want to display our data. Okay, now I'm going to come back. You can see we have a text no contact exists. It means that our database is empty. Okay. Alright, now let's work on the form part. As you can see, we have our forms here. So I'm going to come back to the VS Code and open this add contact. At first we need to have a useState hook to display all the data from our inputs. So I'm going to write here contact set contact is equal to useState, and inside here we need to have an object. So we are going to write all the inputs name here, Okay, we have write all the names of our inputs here, and now we need to pass them to our inputs. So I'm gonna write here a value to be contact.fullname, and we need to have an onChange here to change our input. So our onChange will get an event here. Following that, we need to have a setContact. Now we need to print whatever data exists inside this contact and just change this full name to be e.target.value. Okay, now I'm going to copy this value and onChange and paste them inside other inputs. Now we need to change these names. Okay, but for the last input, which is file, for our image uploading, we don't need this value, and we just need this onChange here. Okay, and I'm gonna change this image to be e.target.files. Okay, we have changed all the data here. Okay, we need to change the values here. Alright guys, we have changed all the data now, and now we need to have a function here to submit our form. So now I'm gonna write here const handle submit, and I need to write here on submit inside this form and paste this function here. Now if I refresh the page and if I click this button, you can see we have a refresh here. So to stop this auto refresh, you need to come back and inside this function just write e.preventDefault. It will help us stop this auto refresh inside a form. Now I'm gonna come back here. You can see if I click this button, we are not seeing this refresh anymore. Alright, now let's see if we can print our data from this inputs or not. So I'm gonna write here console log, and I'm gonna write contact here. So let me fill all the inputs. Now if I click this button, you can see that all the data from our inputs has been printed here. Alright, it means that our form is completely ready. Okay. Alright, now we need to create a new function to post a new data. So I just come back here, and at first I'm gonna write here create a new contact. Okay, now export const add contact equal to this arrow function. I think here again try catch block, and this time we need to receive data from our form. If you remember, we are gonna send this contact as data to this function. Okay. So now inside this function, the first step is gonna be uploading the image, and the second step is gonna be upload our text. So now let's upload the image. So in here we are gonna say if there is any image, it means if we have selected any image inside the form, then we need to create a new form data in here. Now we need to write a name for this form data. So I'm gonna write here const image name is equal to date.now plus data.image.name. This is gonna be our image name, and now we need to append this name to our form data. I'm gonna write here form.append. The name of this image is gonna be image name, and now the file of this image is gonna be data.image. So this data.image is coming from our useState hook, if you remember. Okay, finally we need to reassign our data.image to our new image name. Okay. Now down here we need to send this data to our API using post request. So I'm gonna write here try catch block again, and inside here we need to have await access.post. So we need to write the base URL here. Following that, you need to write API and upload. So if you remember, when we were uploading the image, we had these route names, right? So now following that, we need to send our data. So inside this error, we are gonna write true error and error. Okay. Now our uploading image is completed. Down here inside this next try and catch, we need to send our text. So in here I'm gonna write const response is equal to await access.post, again base URL, API contact, and we have create route here. So if you remember, inside these routes, we have a post request and the route is create, right? Following that, we need to send this data to our backend API. Finally, we need to return this response dot. Okay, we need to get this variable from here, response dot new contact. And finally, we need to write a throw error to error in this catch. Okay. And now our function is completely ready. Now I'm gonna come back to our form here, and at first we need to import useMutation from React-query, and down here we need to write add new contact. Now we need to destructure something from useMutation hook. So always remember that when you wanna display some data, you need to use useQuery. But if you want to send some data to the backend, you need to write useMutation inside React-query. Okay. So now we need to get muted is loading and is error from this useMutation. And now we need to import our function here, this add contact. Okay. And finally, we need to have a block. Inside this block, we need to have an onSuccess, this arrow function, and from here we need to console log our data. Okay. Okay, as you can see, we have muted is loading and is error here. So muted is a function that will help us pass the data to our server. So down here, I'm gonna write muted, and inside here we need to write this contact. Finally, once we click this submit button, we want to redirect to the main page. So to do that, I'm gonna come back. So we need to import use navigate from React router DOM, like I did here, and I'm gonna copy this navigate from here and write that inside this function. And we need to choose our directory here. So in this case, it's gonna be this slash, which means the home page. Okay. Now let's check our form. Now if I click this button, you can see I am redirected to the main page, but we don't have any data here. As soon as I refresh the page, you can see that we have the data displayed here. Okay. We have a problem with the image. So now to fix this problem, we need to go back to our server code, and inside here we need to make a route, and inside here we need to make a path for our image. Okay, so first of all, open the terminal and navigate to the server folder here, and inside here you need to install this path. Okay, I have already installed that. Now to make a path here, you need to write app.use. The first parameter is gonna be this /upload route, comma express.static. Now we need to import that path here. Okay. Following that, inside this parentheses, you need to write path.join, the their name, and upload. It means that we are connecting the name of our image with this upload route. Okay. Now let's see how it works. So at first I'm gonna get the name of our image, I'm going to come back to the contacts and console log this data here. You can see that our image name is this one. So I'm going to copy that. And in here we need to open a new tab. So our server URL is localhost 5000 following this upload, if you remember, and we need to write our image name here. As soon as I click enter, you can see that the image is displayed. It means that we have successfully made a path for our image. But don't forget to add this request.body.name, otherwise it will not work. Okay, so now let's display that inside React. So at first I'm gonna open this .env file here. Again, we need to have a URL. This time it's gonna be image URL, okay, and the URL is gonna be this. But following that, we need to write /upload, if you remember here, and after this slash our image name will be, okay. So I'm gonna come back to the contact here, and we need to receive this URL from our .env file. Again, I'm gonna copy here and paste this, and I need to change our variable name to this name. Okay, now all you need to do is just write here folder plus image. You can see that we have successfully displayed our image inside the browser. Okay, now let's check it again with a new user. Okay, here is a new problem. Is when I click this button, if I don't refresh the page, I can't see any data in here. Okay, so to solve that problem, we need to open add contact again, and we need to import a new function from React-query. It's called useQuery client, and down here we need to write a new variable for that called query client is equal to useQuery client. Okay, and in here you need to delete this data and change this console log to be query client dot invalidate queries, and inside this parentheses you need to copy this key from useQuery. Okay, and now let's check it again. If I click the submit button, you can see without refreshing the page, we have successfully displayed the data in the browser. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful for you. In the next video, we will work on delete and update our database. Welcome back guys. So in the previous part, we have worked on how to display data and how to make a post request using React-query and React.js. Now in this part, we are going to work on how to make a delete request to delete a post from our database and a put request to update our post. Okay, now let's get started. Now I'm going to come back to the VS Code and open this contact.jsx. Down here you can see we have two buttons. The first one is delete button and the second one is update button. So at first we will implement how to delete a post. Now I'm going to open this fetch contact file, and inside here we need to make a new function to make a delete request. So I'm going to write here export const remove contact. Inside here we need to have a try and catch block, and it's going to be an asynchronous function again. Now we need to receive an ID from our post. So down here I'm going to write await access.delete request. Again we need to get this base URL /API/contact, and finally we need to print this ID. So if you remember, inside this route we have this delete request following this dynamic ID. So we are gonna pass this ID dynamically, okay? Now following that, we are gonna write delete and ID, okay? I'm gonna copy and paste this error here. Now I need to open this contact.jsx, and at first we need to write a comment here, and now we need to have a useMutation hook again. So I'm gonna write here const object is equal to useMutation. I'm gonna import that from React-query. So again we need to receive this muted is loading is error. Now inside this useMutation hook, we need to have a key, which is gonna be this contact, okay? And following that, we need to send our ID. So I need to destructure that underscore ID from the contact, which is coming from the database, and I'm gonna write that here. Following that, we need to paste our function from the fetch contact.jsx, okay? Now we need to have a block here, and again we need to have that on success. So I'm gonna copy and paste that query client again here, and we need to copy this query client dot invalidate queries, okay? Now I'm gonna import this useQuery client. Alright, as you can see, we don't have any error in the browser. That's cool. Now we need to set an on click to this button, and we need to paste this muted here, and finally we need to send this ID underscore ID to our server. Now let's check it. Okay, seems we have an error here. Now let's check that in the browser. I did not delete this part because I want to show you how to debug your code when you face some errors. You can see that we made a slash before delete and our ID here. So I'm gonna come back and add this slash before this ID and delete route here, okay? Now if I click this button, you can see our data is deleted from the browser. Alright, okay, we have successfully made the delete function. Now let's move to the next button, which is update. So when we click this button, we want all the data to be printed inside this form. And again, we will have two separate functions, one for adding a new post and one for updating the post. Okay, now in this case, we are going to use context API. So context API is a built-in React.js state management, and we can manage our states. Now inside this search, we need to have a new folder for our context and a new file here. I'm going to generate the React code again here. And at first we need to create our context, okay? And now you need to change this div to be this contact context here, but you need to add this provider, alright? And we need to close our div with this contact context.provider, okay? And now we need to receive this children because we are gonna wrap our application with this context API. So I'm gonna print the children in here, alright? Now this context API will send some value to our application, and now we need to have a use state hook in here. I'm gonna call that update. Set update is equal to use state, and the initial value is gonna be null. Alright, now we are gonna send this data to our application. So context API is a cool thing that will help you avoid props derailing. It means that you don't have to pass data from one component to other component. Instead, you will have access to the data in all over the component. Later on, you can see how it works. Now we need to wrap our application using this context. So I'm gonna open this main.jsx here, and in here you need to import the context and write this app inside. Now we have access to this use state hook in all over the application. Okay, down here we need to have an export function so we can receive our data in whatever component we want. Now I'm going to write here export const contact context share is equal to array function use context, and we need to print this contact context in here. So from now on we can restructure our data from context API using this function. Okay, now let's move to the contact.jsx, and in here we need to destructure set update from this contact context share function. Okay, we need to get this update. Now let's console log this update if we are having this or not. I'm gonna inspect the browser, and you can see the initial value is null. It means that we have successfully connected our context API to this application. Alright, now down here we need to set a new function for when we click the update button. So when we click the update button, we want to send all the data to this set update function. Okay, and again we need to navigate to our form. So inside here we need to import use navigate hook again. Okay, import that from React Router DOM, and down here we need to choose our directory, which is /add. Alright, now let's make an on click to our button here, and it's gonna be handle update. Alright, now if I click this button, I will be directed to the form page here, and in here I'm gonna inspect. Okay, and now I'm gonna open this add contact here, and again in here I need to destructure this set update and update again in here. Okay, and now I'm gonna console log this update to check whether I have received this data or not. Okay, as soon as I click this button, you can see inside this form page we have a new data which is coming from the card. It is a separate course data, and now we need to display them inside this form. Okay, now we need to define a useEffect hook in here. Okay, now inside here we need to set a condition. We need to check if there is some data inside this update useSet hook, then we want to set contact, and then we need to send that update to our set contact function. So I'm gonna write here a block. At first we need to get all the data exist inside our contact, and then we need to reassign our data to our update data like this. Okay, now let's check. You can see that our form is filled with the new data, but here we got a problem with date of birth. That's because you can see that the format inside this birth is different than the format inside our form. Now if we take a look at this birth, you can see we have the year, month and day here, and following that we have the time. So what do we need to do is we need to change this string to an array, and we will separate that with this t which is inside here, and then we will get the first index. Now let me show you inside the code. So inside here we need to write .split, and we are gonna split our string using this t. It means that we change this string to an array and just get the first index. Okay, now you can see our form is filled with our date of birth. Alright, and now let's change this title here. So when we want to add a new contact, this text should be add contact, but when we want to update a contact, it should be update contact. So I'm gonna come back here, and we need to set a condition here. We say if there is a data inside this update, we wanna print the text update contact here. Otherwise, we wanna print the text add contact. Okay. Now you can see because we have data inside this update, we have update contact here. Now let's change this button text as well. So down here we need to set a condition again. I'm gonna copy and paste the previous condition here and just change this to be update, and this one is gonna be submit. So when there is a data, we wanna write update. If there is no data, we wanna write submit. Okay, now you can see our text is changed here. Okay, this is for when we have data. And what if we don't have any data inside our update useState hook? You can see our inputs are empty, and this text add contact is printed here with this submit. Okay, now our form is ready. Now let's make the update function. So at first we need to open this fetch contact.jsx again, and down here we need to write export const update contact is equal to arrow function, and now we need to receive data, which is contact. We need to write try and catch here, and asynchronous function. Inside this try we need to write await access.put base URL API contact and our contact ID. And finally, we need to send this contact data to the server. I'm gonna copy and paste this error message here again. Okay. Now let's copy this function from here. And down here inside this handle submit, we need to set a condition. We need to check if there is an update data inside our update useState hook. We wanna print something. Otherwise, we want to print the previous function, which is adding a new contact. Okay, now let's work in the new function. So I'm gonna copy and paste this useMutation hook again. Now I'm gonna change these names to be update contact because they will be duplicated. Okay, and now we need to copy this function from here and change this function to a new function, which is update contact. We need to import that. Okay, but because they look to be duplicates, I'm gonna add a new s in here. Alright, now our function is ready. Let's paste that inside this condition, and we need to send this contact data. Alright, and again we want to be redirected to the main page, so I'm going to copy and paste this and navigate here. Alright, now let's check if our update functionality is working or not. But before that, we need to destructure this ID from our update useState hook, because we need to send this ID to our API. Okay, now let's check. Okay, I'm gonna update this text here, phone number and date of birth. Now let's update. You can see that our card is updated immediately. Okay, we have an issue with our date of birth, so to fix that we need to open the VS Code again, and we need to install a new library which is called moment. Just install that. Okay, and now we need to open this contact.jsx and import that moment here, and down here you need to wrap this text with curly braces and write this moment. Inside this parentheses write this birth dot format, and the format is gonna be this L. Okay, now let's check in the browser. You can see that our date of birth is formatted. Okay, alright guys, now let's add a new card here. You can see I could add a new card, and if I click this button, I'm able to delete a card here, and if I click this button, I will be redirected to the form page to update my contact here. I'm gonna change a new text here. Okay, if I click this update, you can see that my card is updated. Alright guys, that's it. It was the final video for this application. I hope it was helpful for you. So if you like to watch more videos like this, please give a subscribe to my channel and like this video. See you in the next video.